We have the great pleasure tonight of talking with a legend in the state of Illinois coaching, Coach Mick Ruettiger. He was the head coach at Plano High School in 1981, at St. Charles from 1982 to 1997, and then took over and started the Neuqua Valley High School program from 1997 until his retirement in 2016. He was a 2002 IWCOA Hall of Fame inductee. As I said, he was the first head coach in program history for Neuqua Valley. All-time record of 461, 275, and 4. Coached teams to 9 regional titles, 1 sectional title, and his St. Charles team in 1997 took a third-place team finish. He had 4 individual state champions, 11 runner-up, 52 all-state, and 105 state qualifiers, and I think most importantly, was a 7-time Ruettiger Cup champion.
That's been changed.
Okay.
12 time.
12 time. Okay. Got to get clarification there, but
that one for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Coach, and talking with us tonight. This is awesome. So glad to be able to
My pleasure.
have you here. So we always kind of start off with just some general introductions. So how have you been holding up during the pandemic?
You know what? I've been holding up pretty well. No COVID right now, and I've been doing my woodworking projects I've been sitting on for a long time, and did redid a 36-year-old table that we've had since my wedding, or our wedding, and made a 42 by 60-inch, believe it or not, shadow box. That had to do with my daughter's wedding. It was a Cub Sox wedding, and I said, I'll tell you what, if we get all the registered people to sign on bats and balls and plates, I'll make a shadow box for it. I finally got it done after 4 years. So, and then made a nice oak mantle for my fireplace. That was, my dad had some oak wood left over and up at his lake house, and so I took advantage of that. So it's been doing good. Doing
Awesome.
Some fishing.
Nice.
I'm missing wrestling though.
Yeah.
You know, all the summer stuff. You know, you try to get together with your teams.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough not to have that connection.
Yeah. What do you think the landscape's going to look like coming up for this upcoming season?
Well, from what we're hearing with the fall sports right now, it doesn't look very good, and I don't know how much they can redirect wrestling. It's a contact sport. You know, they have new rules every year about safety, about the physicalness of the sport, with the body weight awareness and stuff, but you still have to go full contact, and that worries me to the point where Illinois is a very cautious state, and you know the kids are, you know, I will say this though, so I'm not sure on that. I guess you got to see month by month to see how this COVID is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, that it was great to see the Rumble on the Rooftop.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago. And I would like to see how those kids are hanging out or doing, if they've got any symptoms or anything like that. And July 25th, there's another big wrestling with USA Wrestling in the world team members. So, you know, I would like, so you know that they're wrestling together in practice. They can't be. So I would like to see how they are tested and see what the results are from there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be something that's interesting, but I mean, yeah, I didn't even think about it to this point though, but if there are people obviously training like that, what are they doing differently and what can we possibly do to at least keep the sport going? So,
well, I think they're in other states.
Yeah. So this is kind of the point where we just kind of give you a chance to talk to us a little bit and kind of explain your journey. You know, I laid out, you know, just kind of a small snapshot of your career, but
sure.
Can you just kind of talk us through, you know, your wrestling journey from, you know, your youth through high school into college and then just kind of into coaching as well?
Okay, I'll try to keep this short. I'm known to ramble a little bit, but I will say this: wrestling came into our family when I was a junior in high school, but I didn't get a chance to wrestle because of a broken arm from football. So I started as a senior in high school. I did fairly well, and won 19 matches that year, and didn't get a chance to get to sectionals. But at the same time, they only took 2 from the regionals. So you live and learn. And then I went to wrestling college just because I thought I had a penchant for the sport. And I wrestled at Jones Junior College for 2 years, went to Eastern and wrestled 3 years based on the redshirt year, and I was literally 20-20 in my college. So I wasn't a great wrestler. I was a pretty good average wrestler, if you could say pretty good average wrestler. I was 20 seconds from wrestling Lee Kemp in the Northern Open. And again, you lose focus a little bit. You're up 6-1, and you get Granby for 5. And those days you didn't have overtime. You just had criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But I did wrestle Dave Schultz. I want to say I got him into the second period, but I don't think I did. That was when he was at Oklahoma State,
mm-hmm.
and at the Cowboy Open. That was when you saw him when he was a freshman. Actually, I take that back. He came from Oklahoma State as a sophomore,
mm-hmm.
and he had a following of kids that were just like he was a Pied Piper.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch him walk around the arena there, 7 or 8 kids were always behind him talking to him. So he was a pretty decent guy, great guy with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And but that was so there's a lot of good experience that I got out of wrestling. So after I went out, I was ready to go into wrestling. Actually took away my journalism career because I was ready to go on a job hunt as a sports journalist
mm-hmm.
out of Eastern Illinois. And I was asked to be the graduate assistant wrestling coach at Eastern. So that kind of got my juices going with coaching. And then went out to Baltimore for 2 years and hooked up with the program called Mount St. Joe. That was
mm-hmm.
one of the best programs in Maryland. And they were, when I stepped on in there as a full-time volunteer, I was working in the public sector, and they'd already won 12 in a row, 12 state championships in a row. But we won a couple more, and there was a place called the U.S. National East. I'm not sure how they say that. It was a Eastern Nationals
mm-hmm.
for private schools, and it was held at Lehigh after the high school season. And we won one. We took first there, took third there. So we had a pretty high level team. We had kids that were recruited into the program from all over you got that Eastern Seaboard with small states. So
yeah.
Parents came into Baltimore and they worked there. Some of them did. They dropped their kids off, and there were some really good kids coming out of that program. And then I came back to Illinois. Got a head job. I was 25. I got my first head job at Plano, and it was a program that was teetering on being good, and you just had to get the kids program going. And I had a really good guy that was a former head coach of the program to pick that up. And so I was there for 1 year. I actually had an opportunity to coach at St. Charles that year, but I'd already signed a contract. So I decided not to go there and stay with the contract. And then went to St. Charles. And not that I'm thinking when I was wrestling in high school, it was just one class. And then the next year it became a 2-class system. And not that I was, Class A and Class AA, you had a chance to go to St. Charles. And so I'm going to try this AA stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got that job. And the only reason we did well was because of the kids that we brought up through our middle school and our kids program. Mm-hmm. We struggled for a good 6 years. And I want to say this, that when I came into the program, St. Charles was an average program, and I tried to change the face of the program by just putting more into the sport mm-hmm. on an individual basis and as well as a coaching basis. And so we had morning practices. We had, the program was definitely, there's a different feel in the program. And I just tried to run it the way that I saw Mount St. Joe run it, the way Eastern Illinois ran it. I'm thinking, we're not looking for collegiate wrestlers here, but we are certainly looking for kids that want to put the time in mm-hmm. and find out how good of a sport this is. And there's, so we worked pretty hard. We lost several kids that year because they weren't used to they just weren't used to it. I'm nothing against them. It's just a matter of, I think there was a shock to their system that they were, what are we doing here? We didn't work this hard before.
Yeah.
So, and you had to get it across. But anyway, we put that system into place, and the kids that stuck around I mean, I was lucky to have 8 kids out of that in the 15 years I was there go on to military school, go on academies. And so I'm not sure why that was, but at Neuqua, I believe there were 3 kids. I know at least 2, maybe, no, I think there were at least 3 kids that went to naval or the academies from Neuqua too. And but we've had many kids that went into military, several kids going to military after high school, or even ROTC programs in college. So I think wrestling and that has the same aspect to it as a discipline that the military ingrains in you. So that the 15 years at Neuqua or at St. Charles were really good learning curve for me, because we had to build that program. We had a Saturday school that we started out with, and it was like 100 kids show up the first day. So holy cow, what are we gonna do with all these kids? So I had great parents that picked up the slack, and it was like I had a family starting to go anyway, a couple kids early in my career, and then it was, if it wasn't for my wife Bobby, I don't think I would have been coaching for 40 plus years. Well, she wants me to coach now. She wants me out of the house. But growing up with the kids, it was she dealt with a lot of the issues, raising a family. Not that I didn't, but it was her that. So you got to have a good family behind you,
Definitely.
And you got to have some faith. I'm telling you, when you're struggling with when you've come from programs that have been very successful, and then you're trying to build a program, and it's a struggle. You just got to have faith that you're doing the right thing, and you connect with the kids. I think when I was coming through St. Charles, I tried to get. Well, I didn't try. I got to know every kid by first name, and I was very intent on wanting these kids, from the freshmen to the sophomores to the freshman, JV, varsity level programs. They were all the same to me, as far as there wasn't any. Obviously there was a hierarchy of talent, but not of personalities and kids. I got, one of the reasons I left St. Charles, they didn't kick me out, but my kids were coming into high school. I had a daughter who was going to be a 6th grader, and then I ended up getting offered a job at Neuqua. And I'm thinking, I'm a dean at St. Charles, and there was an issue at St. Charles. Maybe it was just kind of like just happened in 1996, where one of the deans, who was a coach, good guy, is some kids threw some bricks through his picture window in his front of his house, because they were upset with how he with the suspension. I'm thinking, is that worth it to have my kids go through that when I'm in the building? So at the same time, I wanted my kids to just make it on their own. It was good for me to be out of the building, let them go to St. Charles and make it on their own. Neuqua Valley was a great. It was a great transition place for me, because the parents I had at St. Charles were the same type of parents that stepped up at Neuqua. It wasn't even, you didn't even have to beg at St. Charles once we got the program started. And the thing is, the kids program made those parents understand what the wrestling was and where their kids could go within the sport. And the Neuqua parents, it was like the same. I just, when I put out my information as far as Booster Club, they were there ready and willing to, what do we need to get done? And if without a Booster Club, they're not all called Booster Clubs, but parent clubs, you just don't get the good feel of the entirety of what wrestling can do for you and bring to the kids. But again, the wrestling club was the key to our program. We were pretty decent early on, and because I think that we just had tough kids. We tried to instill a toughness and putting, really laying down our philosophy as far as how do you get tough? You know, some kids just have toughness coming into the room. Other kids are just saying, well, I want to be tough. You know, toughness, I'm talking about just getting, not being a big bad guy in the room, just a kid that will work through everything you want him to do. And if you can build trust with those kids, like the old saying goes, they'll go through the wall for you.
Right.
And I think we had that early. And I think that the kids that we started with were just, you know, kids that wanted to play, and I'm going to say this, play more than one sport. We had several starters that were just football wrestlers, and they were just awesome. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we ended up, you know, if you look at Illinois Matman was out at that time, and I think in 2000 we were honorable mention, and that was a really nice thing to see because people started seeing Neuqua Valley. Yeah. And then we went on a great 15-year run, and I'm going to say that you know, we didn't get downstate as a team, but we sure got a lot of individuals down in bunches, and kids went down there and they placed, and some of these kids were first-time varsity wrestlers that went downstate. It was awesome to see. And some of our kids that didn't make it downstate, where they were just a hair away from it, were they just weren't. They just missed out because of the people that they were better than them on the mat at that time and place. And so, but it's my big philosophy within the sport of wrestling was we're not looking to win or lose. You know, that's not what it's about. It's about scoring points. Mm-hmm. If you score points, that shows that you are confident. You're aggressive. You know what the sport's about. I mean, you're going to take your wins and losses. I don't know how many kids have ever been undefeated in wrestling. It's probably 3% in the whole world of wrestling, if that much. But I think that takes some pressure off of them if they can really look at putting it in the concept of, if I score, that guy's got to score too. Yeah. If I defend, there's not much scoring he's going to do on me. So, and then winning comes because of that. Yeah. But there's so much more to it than that, and I think that we got that across to our kids. I think we had a lot of kids come through our program, and the only thing that I would say that we did lose was a two-sport athlete a lot, more so once we got into probably the mid-2000s, we started losing the football players or other athletes that were in baseball or track, and that was a struggle. But you know, you try to bring the sport to the kids to the point where it's such a great sport to have behind you when you're going out into your career. Be just either a job or right away out of high school or into college, because you fail so many times in wrestling that if you don't get up, you're not going to get up. You know, you might as well crawl out the door. But if you can get up off that mat and get back on your feet, there has been so many seniors that were not varsity kids throughout the 36 years or 35 years as a head coach. They knew what it was about. They could see, you know what, I may not be the best wrestler here, but I sure like the sport. They can see little gains, and that's another thing I preach. You know, you don't see the gains you're making as much as the coaches do. Yeah. So you got to trust us, and I can see a couple things here or there that you weren't doing 2 weeks ago that you were doing now, and just trust us that we're there for you. And these kids were, I mean, they got to be JV champions, you know, and some of these kids got a chance to start on the varsity level, and they were, believe me, they were thrilled to do that. It was a really good. Wrestling is such a great life, mimic of life. It's, I mean, growing up in a family of 14, I'll say this: if you didn't take care of yourself, You weren't going anywhere. You certainly couldn't take care of your brother or sister when you needed to. So that's kind of like wrestling. You know, you got a big group there for the most part, and you got to be able to take care of yourself by working hard. You don't have to be a leader through your vocal leader. Some kids can't be vocal and lead, but other kids can just show how to do it by just working hard every day. And you know what? And you can be your opponents in the wrestling room when you're going live. And that's another thing that we tried to instill. So you can't be, soft on each other. You gotta try not to get taken down. Don't get taken down. My gosh, it's a matter of not being satisfied. It's my dad tell us, don't be satisfied, man. I was an alternate, and I remember this. You remember certain things from your parents when you're growing up, and I felt that I should have made the all-star team, but I was an alternate on Little League Baseball all-star team, and I said, yeah, I'm okay. My dad said, you can't be okay with that. You can't be satisfied. If you think you should have been there, then you got to do something different than next time out to try to get to where you want to be. So that's the kind of the prevailing attitude we had as a family.
So would you say, and just kind of, growing up, obviously, you've mentioned your parents a lot, in the conversations I've had with you. Would you say they were your biggest influences?
Yeah. I'll tell you how influential they were. Another little story here. We had to take jobs. We had a paper. Everybody had to be the paper boy or paper girl. And so for 14 kids, it kept getting handed down at a certain time in their life that they had a chance to put their name on the bundle that came to your driveway. Mick Ruettiger, on the bundle. So these are my papers, so I had to take care of them. I had to go out and collect money. But when and we'd worked every summer of our life, and if we didn't get a job, we weren't in good standing. I think we were put in the basement and couldn't eat, but no, it wasn't that bad. But it was like this. My dad said, if you can't find a job, you're going to work the house. And my mom wanted a new laundry room. So we had a decent sized house, but there was a crawl space underneath the family room. My dad said, you're going to dig that crawl space out because your mom wants the laundry room. So what's wrong with the basement over there? Because you don't have a job. So I had 2 buckets, 1 small wheelbarrow, and it was about a 14 by 14 size room, 5 feet high of dirt. I had to dig that. I had to shovel it out bucket by bucket, take it up the steps from the basement. There were literally 12 steps going up. I remember that, 12 steps. Dump it in a wheelbarrow, take it out. We had 3 lots. My dad bought 3 lots for our family, so we had a big play yard. And I took it to the middle of those 3 lots and built a little hill. And I got that done. But what I did find out was that when we had to pour the concrete in that, my dad had told me how to dig it through and make so the forms could be set. And that was a good learning experience. But when I did get a job, I said, Dad, I got a job now. It's like 2 weeks into my digging. And he goes, and? He goes, now the other boys got to help. He said, go ask them. I think one brother helped me for like a day. Then he was done. He goes, this is yours. So it was all mine. But that's just a matter of how we were brought up. Just to the point of you got to help each other out. You got to put things in a perspective, and all our money went into all 14 of our kids went through a Catholic school, K through 12 or 1 through 12. So that was where you get a little of your background.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of transition a little bit into more advice because obviously you it's over 40 years now, right, total, with being
42. I was counting up today. I better have that. So it was 35 as a head coach because you can't count the lead coach. We just had a JV schedule, so 35, and then 1 year as a lead coach and now 5 years as an assistant.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, you've seen a lot, you've done a lot, you've dealt with a lot, bringing up, starting the program at Neuqua as well. So we got a couple questions with that here later on, but, going back to, the early days in Neuqua through the mid 2000s at St. Charles, you had very good teams, very good individuals. You know, what do you think really separated those teams from the rest?
I think that sitting down and talking to them, saying, "Hey, this is where we're at. This is what wrestling's good at. What you're gonna have a chance to do with wrestling." And you look around, and you don't want you to look at look around at your teammates. These guys are here with you. I mean, you're expected to be at practice every day, on time, and then it was to a point where in those days you could. I'm not gonna say if they can still do it, but you can do a little more physical, be more physical with running and putting them through some different drills, because if they were late or they missed practice. But I think that the message is so important as far as how to strategize the team and getting the kids, and one of the biggest things was who was going what weight class. These guys bought into it, man, I'm going to be the best. But it's now some of these guys were sacrificing for each other to go to a lower weight class.
Yeah.
And that was about the time, I think, in the early 2000s that they started we were already doing hydrostatic testing before the state started their body fat test. And so it was, and some of these kids now then were already looking like in the fall. If they weren't a football player, they're looking in the fall to see what weight they were going to go just to help each other out. And which was, again, pretty meaningful to them. But anyway, these communication was such an important role I thought I had to have, and I knew this just based on the sport of wrestling, that very seldom will you have a group of coaches together for more than 3 or 4 years. And I just learned that from experience, and it was like I had some tremendous people early in St. Charles where I learned that, but they were outstanding individuals, but they were moved up on, some of them moved up on the ladder as far as, like, I had a science teacher that became, he was with me for 2 years, and then he became a department assistant chair, and then he was also a football coach. Then he became, he went to a north side school to teach, and then he was offered a department chair job, and then he was offered, now he's a superintendent. So those guys knew were there. Some of those guys, and I had another guy that was a industrial tech guy that was just they 2 or 3 years, and they went out and did their own business. Both these guys. Another guy that was another tech guy that got into cross country. He's a state former conference champ for St. Charles, and so I knew that it was going to be a mixture of people coming through the program, and you're not always getting teachers that are wrestling coaches from the college level as much as you would like, but that's not going to happen. You're fortunate to get a couple of those guys through in your program, and they will stay. But you're constantly juggling new coaches, and I say that only because I think that that's what they want. When sometimes you have to just say, maybe coaching wrestling isn't for you, but at Neuqua early was the same situation, and it's not for lack of coaches. It's just a matter of they were doing other things, and young parents, they were assistant coaches, and they felt that they couldn't do two different sports, and they decided to give up wrestling because maybe football or track was their sport. But that's okay. You said so. You learn to deal with a lot of things through your own eyes, and then try to delegate as much as possible. But then you knew that somewhere along the line, a couple years, you redelegate. Now with the last coaching staff that I was fortunate to have with you and Aaron and myself and Mike, you guys have been together for how many years now? 4 or 5 at least?
Going on year 6 with Haber and year 5 with Mike.
Yeah, for sure. So, you guys were, you could tell when you were interviewed, when I interviewed you and Aaron, and I knew Mike he was already in it for a long time. You guys were already coaching too,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know you guys that well.
Yeah.
But from your interviews, you know what, you guys had plans, and you had the foresight to know what wrestling. I mean, you knew what wrestling was all about, but you could foresee where you wanted to go in wrestling,
right?
And have that part of your career.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got lucky.
Appreciate that.
At that point in time, I was too old to get the crown for you. So anyway, so I think that's, you know, our kids, you know, they wrestled in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
We were fortunate to have overtime.
Mm-hmm.
We probably had, believe it or not, we didn't have a lot of kids go there, but we probably had 8 to 10 kids go there. And overtime was a real catch-all for a lot of kids in the area. So I think they had like 30 or 40 group sessions, but you're talking Plainfield, you're talking Indiana, you're talking Grant High School, 2 or 3 years they sent kids down there. And it was just Joliet, it was just all over the place. You know, Orland Park, people just flocked to overtime. So your space was limited, but we still had kids wrestling in the off season outside of being in overtime. And one of the things I tried to get across to the kids that were wrestling in the off season was, if you want to play football, man. I mean, we had several cross country players that were throughout the 2000s, and sometimes they were better wrestlers than they were cross country players, and vice versa. But they wanted to do another sport, and I think that your mind, it's such a different competitive angle. That's okay to do 2 sports, and very seldom do you have a 3-sport athlete now. I think I remember one specifically, and maybe 2 or 3 along the road, outside of after like 2002 years. But the second sport doesn't involve wrestling. It involves competition. It involves other people involved, you know, other teammates, other coaches, and you get a good blend of things. And I think that's why those 2 sports is a really, really good. If you look at everybody, I think most kids are looking, man, I want to be a college athlete. Not most, well, some kids. There's a lot of kids that want to be a college athlete. And if you look at the college athletes that are going, even division, whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3, even NAIA, you're going to see them being more multiple sport athlete, whether it's track and football or whatever, you know, wrestling, football. So I just think that it's good for the mindset. And you don't need to be a wrestler 12 years a month or 12 months a year.
Yeah.
Those months can be offset, and just give your mind a break.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, obviously you've mentioned it a lot, you know, but I kind of want to pick your brain here a little bit with it. You know, the mental side of the sport. You know, what did you do in your rooms, you know, and then even as things kind of evolved, as things went on, to really help kind of build that mental toughness in your wrestlers?
You know what I would say? And there's a kind of a game I play with the kids, and they knew it was a game, and they went with it. I really use the term again, 1,700 times before we finished. Or it's okay, we got 3 minutes and we're out of here. 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, the 3 minutes are up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they knew that was going to happen. And the thing is, if those 3 minutes were as long as sometimes 7 minutes, sometimes as long as 15. But if they knew that there's going to be more than 3, but the harder they worked within those 3 minutes, the time got shorter. And so I think that it was just because you don't know, you can't dictate a match all the time.
Right.
And that's just something that they have to, you know, you got to live with it. You know, I don't know, I forgot to look at my clock, guys. What the heck? You know, and one thing I tried to stay away from was cursing in the wrestling room. Even though I did it at times, it wasn't like a staple in my coaching philosophy. I got that turned me off so much as a high school athlete. All I did was get cursed at. And this is private schools too. And it wasn't just the S word it was the F word.
Yeah.
So many times. And I'm not saying I don't swear, but I compartmentalize that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do it with the kids. I think that's such it's not a strength. Let's put it that way. And I think that the kids, if they see, because I was brought up to where you weren't supposed to swear. The only reason I do swear anymore is when I'm working on my projects, is I do something really stupid, like cut my finger on a saw because I'm just trying to do something. I'm trying to force something, and you cut your finger. And well, it happened to me twice in my career as a trying to be a carpenter, and but it's all about. But so the fact that they didn't know when practice was going to end at times. Sometimes just ended it. All right, we're done. What do you mean we're done? Yeah, go out. You're good. This is all good. Just let them have that sense of, wow, we can leave this early. But I think the toughness also was I did this as much as I could, but I probably should have done it more, was give those guys a chance to work with the lower levels. And at times, some years I would, depending on what type of kid I thought we had in the room as far as leadership, I should have just made that a staple every year, and I did it on and off. But it was like you would give these guys, especially in the beginning of the year, like a junior or sophomore or a senior who was was going to be on the varsity level. Well, the sophomores on the varsity level, but juniors and seniors, we would give them kids to work with. During the practice, we'd break up and say, hey, all right, you guys get with your groups and wrestle, and teach what you think that these guys could be working on. And I would give them a chance to teach what their forte was. And that's so I think that was because it gave them a chance to say, hey, I can help somebody out here. And I think that definitely mentally works in a kid's favor, because if he knows that you can trust him to work with other kids to the point at the level of teaching them, then they're gonna be, I think, much more confident on the mat. We had I did this probably for about 3 years. I wish I would have done it more, but we go out to Christmas caroling, and I try to find the coldest day. So that was, I should have done that more, just because you'd have to go out in the cold, and you just have to suck it up and just make other people happy.
Yeah.
We weren't very good singers, but we sure did a good thing for the people in the neighborhoods. And the other thing I think that developmental toughness was, again, this is some things I did, but it wasn't on a consistent basis, was get together with some youth groups and either have the kids practice or be their coaches, during winter, during Christmas time or Christmas break, or even take some kids out for a year, or for the wrestling season, and have them come to matches. And we did it a couple times at St. Charles, and we did a lot of the Christmas break stuff at Neuqua. And these kids got a chance to know some of these kids pretty well. And when you would see 15 or 20 or junior high kids come in, that was good. I mean, the young kids, the kids club, that was a little bit more to ask of trying to get the kids to come at night. Some kids did it, not many, very few kids, but those guys that they just love to work with kids, and I think that's going to pay off for them down the road, for the kids and for the wrestlers that did that. I think that we'd have 5-minute matches, and if I didn't think that, I told them, I said, we're going to do one 5-minute match, or we're going to do 2. This is like at the end of the practice and after a hard practice, and they have to wrestle and they have to look to score. You can tell when people are just kind of going through the motions.
Right.
But it was I mean, people went after it because, again, the philosophy. I try to talk to the kids every day before practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge. And I found, you go to the greats like Gable, and you listen to him speak. He says you need to talk to your teams every day before practice, give them a view of what's going to happen in practice and what the week's going to look like and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so they have to understand where you're coming from. And again, you can't say enough about your expectations for that day. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, and everything flows together. And I'm going to say this, when kids, where I thought were not working hard, I would say for one of our better wrestlers out of our slopes, you know what, you got these 3 guys today, and I want you to work them. And they would go over there and they would put them through a workout. And because you knew that kid, or those 2 kids that you sent over to, that group before, was going to work hard no matter what. And you just had to teach these guys that it's every day. It's an everyday. And you, as a coach, you can't put them through an everyday practice every day, to the nth degree. So you got to know your wrestlers. You got to know where to bring them, mm-hmm. and be able to peak them at the end of the year. And I think that was something we did pretty well. And one, you could always say there's certain things you could do differently, which, believe me, you think through year after year. And we had some really close matches in the state finals that even at mostly Neuqua, we had some tough losses. And even in some of the semifinals we had, it was just disheartening, or I shouldn't say disheartening, heartbreaking at times when these kids just, it's just such a hard fought match. But I think that we just needed to, somewhere along the line, have them open up, and as much as we preached trying to score, hey, one takedown's not going to do it. You've got to put yourself in a position to work with some space as far as the score is concerned. And but anyway, I just think that being with each other as a team and knowing each other, every kid in that room has got to know who each other is. And that's if you have, like, I would say this. I wish you would have had 2 wrestling rooms at Neuqua. That would have been, we have a really nice wrestling room, don't get me wrong, but you need separate rooms. It's just like you can't have a freshman football team practicing with a varsity football team. It just doesn't mesh very well. The one thing I want, the pro of that is that you get to see who's in your room. Yeah. You get to see the younger kids, but it just takes away from sometimes the intensity of the varsity at times. And the younger kids just don't, they see it, but it's, they need to go at their own pace. So that's the pros, a couple pros and cons of being all in the room together. I think that, when you teach technique, you got to, I shouldn't say you got to, but my philosophy was, we're going to show a variety of things. And I'm not expecting you to have a variety of moves that down to the nth degree. You get a good basic offense of probably 2 shots that you can score on, but you have to have multiple types of setups. And the setups are so subtle that people don't even see the setups. They don't even realize that the kid was set up before he took a shot. And that subtleness takes practice. I mean, it's just not going through the motions. And I would say you got to have a heavy drill session, or so I should say this way. If I say you got a light drill session, that's just going real light and getting your body warmed up. Heavy hands, heavy drill session is you're not going live, but the heaviness allows you to feel that resistance, even though it's not a great resistance, there's going to be some resistance in your, if your partner's helping you out, there's going to be some resistance in before you take that shot. So your subtlety of your shots or your setups are getting, that's where they get so, you get so slick in how you, I mean, we've had, you know, the slide by. There were some kids that never wanted to go underneath. I mean, these were kids that were place winners in the state tournament. They did not want, so that slide by made a huge difference. But that slide by is so subtle to get in a position to score. They perfected it. Yeah. There was 3 kids that perfected that, and not everybody wanted to work that hard on it. But these guys didn't want to go underneath either. So we had a decision to make, boys. You know, you either work the slide by, or you don't have anything, worthwhile, right, to score and be where you want to go, or get to where you want to be at the end of the year. But so I think that the perfect practice makes perfect practice. Perfect practice makes perfect practice. That doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect in the meet, because when you're wrestling the top-notch kids, they're going to stop a lot of your stuff, or and if you can't adapt to what you're doing, then you're not going to beat the good kid. Right. But if you can adapt because you worked so hard on your mentality of getting deep in your shot off that setup, then you've got different options underneath. You have no options when you're over your knees. Your chest is way out over your knees. If you get depth in your shot, there's so many more things you got going into your next reaction. I mean, so against the better kids, they have to be able to they got to want to do that. It's not have to do it. Obviously, in order to do it, you have to be able to get there. But my sense was, you want to do that. Otherwise, your second action is not going to be there for you. You're going to think it is, but that kid's got too much position on you. So just that toughens up the mindset too. Mm-hmm. I mean, God, how important is drilling? We can slop through it, or we can make something of it.
Oh, definitely. So we actually have a guest question, but Coach Adam's going to hop on and ask this one. So Adam, okay. you want to hop on?
Yeah, I'm coming on.
Okay.
Connor, you ready?
Yep.
All right, we're going to change up the pace a little bit, and then I got a serious question for you. But this one I think is still serious. So we got the Johnson boys here.
Hey, by the way, Adam, you had a chance to come to Neuqua when you didn't, so just somebody just going to throw that at you.
You know what? You got me there. I got nothing to say. No comment.
Oh, good enough. All right.
All right.
You're all good. You're one of the best guys, man. I'll tell you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry. All right. So the Johnson boys have been big on fishing lately, and we heard you say that you've been fishing a lot this summer. So Connor wanted me to do 2 things. One, he wanted me to share about his fish. He caught a fish that was 31 inches the other day. Connor, this looks big. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then Connor, you wanted to ask Coach Mick.
Go ahead.
You want to ask Coach Mick about the fishing question?
Yeah. What was your biggest fish?
Well, I got to say that my best fish I caught was a smallmouth bass out in Lake Mojave in Henderson, out near Henderson, Nevada. Oh. And I was out there with one of my brother's buddies fishing, and it was a 5-pound smallmouth, which was right after a tournament was fished. And when you go into tournament waters that was just fished, those fish aren't biting for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one of my best. And this guy was a professional fisherman. Nice. So I'm going to say this: we caught 13 fish that day. I caught 8. He caught 5. So that was my best fish story. But my longest fish was like an 18-inch largemouth.
Wow.
But I'm still looking for the northern. I'm still looking for. Although I did have some good walleye. I went out of Lake Erie one time to go on a what do you call that?
Superior.
The what?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I went on, and we went with there was a captain with 6 other guys. And, it was some nice sized walleye. I'm not sure how big they were, but they were edible. So take home.
All right.
So fishing are good. Fishing is good. It's a good
Yeah,
discipline.
we've been chasing the walleye lately. We haven't gotten any luck over here, but we'll get some one of these days. All right, time for a serious question. I got to go away from the Johnson boys. All right, so serious question. By the way, I'm getting a little lag. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So serious question. So I got a text message from a good friend of mine. His name's Patrick Raleigh. He's one of the coaches over at Fisher Middle School, and he's got to be one of the best coaches I've ever worked with. He just knows how to bring the kids out. And when I was coaching over there at Fisher, I remember the last year I was coaching, we'd have to travel over here with 2 buses because we had so many kids.
That's awesome.
And it was something I've never experienced as far as coaching and his ability to connect with kids and whatnot. So question is from him is like, he wanted to know as far as the role that the middle schools play in the development of the whole high school, and then any advice you had for him and all the other middle school coaches, not just in our district but around the area, how to keep bringing those kids out, because that's one thing that he's awesome at already, but he's always trying to get more kids. I don't know how he does it, but he wanted to see what you had to say about recruiting those middle school kids.
Well, I'll tell you what, I learned this, and I'm not the middle school kids have to come into the high school to wrestle. They have to. They just can't forget about wrestling coming into high school, and they can't worry about them not being a kids club wrestler. So that's one of the things that was a sticking point with some of these kids that I talked to as freshmen. I said, hey, you didn't come to the freshman meeting. What's going on? Well, I'm not going to wrestle. Those guys they've already been in wrestling 4 years, and I've been in wrestling 1 or 2 years, So I said, you know what? That's you try to talk to kids through that, but you got to talk to them through it before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you're gonna maybe get 3 out of 10 kids that you talk to.
Yeah.
But I think that the middle school wrestler it's a different level than the kids club wrestling. I think that the best thing I would try to get to do is, and I did this at St. Charles, and it really worked well, but I couldn't get it done at 204 just because of how it was set up. What I did at St. Charles, when I saw that we weren't getting the middle school kids in the kids club, and I think the middle school kids, after their season's over with, should join the Fox Valley. And if not only to compete, I mean, sometimes they're not ready to compete against some of these better kids because they're just not at the level training wise as these kids are, and not so much to put them in the tournaments, just to get them in a room and wrestle with them. But so I think that, and if some kids want to get in the tournaments, more power to them. But I would not pressure that beating they're going to get. I'm going to say, because if they go to senior tournaments, some of these kids, like I say, are only 1 year, first year wrestlers, and the other kids have been wrestling 4 or 5 years. So why put them through that, But just get them the feel of the room. Yeah. But what I was able to do at St. Charles was stop the middle school wrestling at Christmas time, because they would, we had that 2-week break and there was no practice. And then they would come in and do 1 more week of wrestling and the season's over. It doesn't make sense, and I just couldn't get it done to 204 as far as how the 203 and 204 put together. They were in the conference, Yeah. But St. Charles said, okay, if you guys want to stop it on December 19th, that'll be your last meet. Go ahead. And then that way we were able to bring in some of the middle school kids that were whether they're good or bad, it doesn't matter. They got into the room at St. Charles Wrestling Club, and that made a big difference for us, because then the next year, if they were 6th or 7th, and that 6th or 7th graders, they've had almost another year of wrestling under their belt going into the next year. So I think that's important. I think I would try to emphasize to the middle school kids, this is, and especially I talked earlier about just trying to score, looking to score, not worrying about winning and losing, because you're going to, and I would give them information on some of our best wrestlers that never were very good at middle school. They were average at the best, some of these guys. Some of these guys are struggled. And like, you know, a kid that was a 2-time state place winner for us, he struggled in middle school. I mean, he just didn't have it. But you could see him getting better. I mean, and he just decided that, no, he didn't decide. You know, his work ethic brought him into some really good career at the high school. But I think that the patience I've talked about before, you have to have, you know, it's not to the point where it's not you on the wrestling mat. You know, some coaches want to live through the wrestlers and they can't. They have to realize that we're trying to bring these kids through. And the middle school wrestling practice has to be organized to the point where you're building on something on a daily basis. It's just not a free for all. These kids have to realize that it's going to be a practice. Like if you go, and I hate to go and compare sports, but I'm going to say this: being a softball coach for my daughters, being in baseball, being in football, in youth football and stuff, there's never any screwing around as much as some of the middle schools do.
Yeah.
And because kids, I'm not saying, well, I say that the potential is there, but you have to get that middle school in a good organized practice and have them want to practice that way and make it fun too. Put games out there, you know, and put competitive games at the same time. Put them in, you know, in teams too. I mean, the best time you had sometimes, we had these contests at Neuqua, and we would have like little contests. Who could fly make the best paper airplane and fly it across the room? And our worst wrestler was the best plane maker, and they all wanted to be on his team. And I had that kid's planes sticking on my wall in my office because they were so good, and they were the champion plane, you know. But stuff like that in this game called Bosch Ball that one of my assistants, Ben Hummel, brought into Neuqua from California. It's like team handball, but they call it Bosch Ball. And sometimes I would hold that over there. Our wrestlers, you guys want to play Bosch Ball? We need a better workout right now. You know, if you want to play either before or after practice, I'll tell you what, it changed on a dime because they loved that game so much that it was, I don't care who you were, everybody loved Bosch Ball. And it was just like two big teams going after each other, and you had to involve every kid in the room there. So I think if you could put that into the middle schools, they're not always thinking about wrestling. They're thinking about, I'm on the wrestling mat, I'm having fun in here, and not necessarily being wrestling, but they don't care. They're in a wrestling room and they're having fun. And you know, I know that the fun is in fundamentals, but it really is. You know, it's just not. That's hard to get through because it's such a tedious breakdown of a sport. It's so technical that people don't realize they don't believe that it's that technical until they're literally they get involved in the sport. So I think that if you can get some really good basic stuff done early, and not have to worry about, especially when the middle school kids are coming out for the first time. Here's something I thought I know worked was, instead of, say you're going to do a double leg takedown, we're not going to start that kid with a shot. I'm going to start that kid on the mat with two legs, you know, with your belly, with your shoulder in the stomach, and this is how you finish, you know, and then we're going to work backwards. So now the kid knows where he's going at the end of the move, instead of, do I really? Because every time, I mean, even, you know, not being a head coach now, I'm getting to see a little bit more of the freshman and sophomore levels, and so a lot of things they do is when they're going to the mat, they take one hand off the legs or off the lock, and they post before they hit the mat. Why? Because they're afraid of where they're at. They have no idea what to do going to the mat. but if you teach them where you're going to be on the mat early enough, I think that's just even whatever move you're working with, start backwards and work to your feet, because I think that makes such a huge difference in how they will be confident when they have to finish. Yeah. Nobody works on finishes until they're literally taking the guy to the mat. Well, get in a position of on your knees, and then just take them to the mat without having a shot.
That's a good thought. Yeah, it's something I never even thought of. That's a good idea. So basically, go ahead.
Even in the pinning combinations,
yeah.
What's going to happen when I put a simple half? How's this guy going to react to me? Put the guy on his back with the half in and start like that, and then so when you're taking him over, you're going to know that how the guy's going to react, and you got a better feel for the finish.
That's a great idea. Yeah, it's funny that you said the whole changing the season start time and end time, because that's a battle we fought every year at 204, the whole middle school thing. But yeah, the games too. I mean, wrestling's hard. You got to make it fun. I get it. So no, awesome advice. I appreciate it. I know Coach Riley will take that to heart too.
I'll tell you what to bring in: bosh ball and a spike ball.
Bosh ball and spike ball. All right, done.
I mean, I can't believe how much spike ball is being played out there now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And these wrestlers bring their nets with them to the mats, to the tournaments. Thinking, this is like, before you had, when you're in circles between rounds, you would do like duck, goose or whatever, or you play something else. But now these kids are bringing, I see several teams bringing spike ball nets, and they're playing spike ball between rounds, which is really, I think, is pretty cool, actually.
Hey, whatever it takes to bring them out.
It is, yeah, for sure.
All right, Wyatt had a question, I think, for you. This is Wyatt. Okay. You saw him earlier today. So go ahead, Wyatt.
Isn't your brother Rudy?
My name is Rudy. My brother is Rudy. I think I couldn't hear you very loud, but my brother is Rudy, yes.
And did you guys wrestle together?
You know what? I'm going to say this. We all wrestled. We had 7 boys, and 7 boys wrestled. Now, my brother Rudy was 8 years older than me, and he was 5 years older than my next brother. So we didn't get a chance to play sports together. But what we were able to do is we were able to watch him play football, he played baseball, and he wrestled. And so he was a pretty tough guy. And but I'm going to say this: when we did wrestle in the backyard, I got the best of him.
All right. Just like you, Wyatt, you got to beat up your brother a little bit. All right.
Yeah, he loved wrestling.
Thank you, Wyatt. Appreciate it. We got another question. Let's see here. Benny, come on in. There he is. All right, this is Benny and another one of our coaches, Witkowski. Benny, you got to unmute yourself.
There you go.
All right.
Hey, Benny.
Hi. Okay, so what was the best team you coached against?
Against? Oh.
Yeah.
Besides Waubonsie Valley, obviously.
Obviously, Waubonsie. Hey, on that note, I definitely would have been at Neuqua had you called me like 2 weeks earlier. Just so you know, Mick.
I know. That was my bad. I'm going to say this. That was my bad. I had you on my list of things to do, but 2 weeks late.
Hey, things happen for a reason.
The toughest team I wrestled against was a team. I'm going to give you both at St. Charles and at Neuqua. With St. Charles, we were wrestling. By the way, we had a great rivalry with Waubonsie Valley. But the best team we lost to was we were in the semifinals of the state dual meet tournament. We lost to Providence, and they ended up winning the state tournament that year, and they went on a 6-year run of state championships. But we had those guys. We were down 20-0. We came back and made it 20-18, and we had 3 of our better kids coming up against it was a good. The matches were toss-ups, and we ended up being disqualified at 160 pounds because of a flagrant foul we did. So we lost. We went from 3 points down to 11 points down, and we had a pin to win. We didn't do it, but that was probably the best team because a lot of those kids went on to wrestle in college from Providence, and actually so did our kids. Our kids, we had I think at least 4 kids on that team who won wrestling college, and so those are 2 really tough teams, and with Waubonsie that year, we wrestled them for 3rd place. It came down to the last match, and we beat them by a point. And it was we sent Coach Rossiano home on he had a great career, but we finally got him in that last match. And then at Neuqua, boy, we had such a tough schedule. We went out to St. Ed's of Ohio it was called the Elite 8, and we had 8 teams, and we were from the Illinois, and there was a Missouri team, Oak Park, Missouri. There was St. Ed's. There was a team out of Virginia, a team out of Poway, California. I mean, it was just an awesome. We did that for a couple of years. Then they disbanded the tournament But anyway, so we were wrestling St. Ed's, and they were ranked number 1 in the nation. And I thought we had a chance to win 4 matches. We won 2. So, and it was just they were just again those kids were recruited into their school, and more power to them. They were just a quality team. Also, they weren't trying to, they knew they were good, obviously, but they didn't try to push it on you. It was just we wrestled as well as we could, but it was just that was the toughest team we wrestled at Neuqua. But we had some tough Illinois teams too. One of the best teams we wrestled was Oak Park River Forest, and we wrestled them for like 4 years in a row. And they had just won a state championship the year before, and we were wrestling. The best weekend we probably had as a dual meet team. We beat West Aurora, we beat Lombard North, and we stopped Oak Park's winning streak of like 75 dual meets in a row, all on the same Saturday. So that was a great weekend for us. So it was we had some really tough kids, and they had some tough kids. So there was some really matches that went down to the wire.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
hey,
Awesome.
great question, Benny. Great question. Good to see you, bud.
Yeah, thanks,
You
Benny.
too.
All right. Well, I think we probably have like 20 other questions for you, Coach Ruettiger, but we're kind of running out of time here. So I don't know if Parton, you want to hop back on and ask any other final questions?
I'm coming on.
All right.
No, we just like we said, Coach, really appreciate you coming on. It's awesome being able to just pick the brains of some of the best in the sport, people that has just been around and experienced a lot. So I would just say, in the 2 years that I was able to coach for you, you had a lot of wisdom, you had a lot of things to say, and your messages were very well received. So if you could kind of give us just one final big piece of advice as we navigate through building up Fox Valley, as our dads navigate through coaching, and as our wrestlers navigate through kind of growing in the sport, what would that big piece of advice be?
Well, I go to the wrestlers because I'm not successful if the wrestlers aren't successful. And I'm gonna say, it's a community sport. It really is. And it's a community sport that is a sacrificial sport. you think about all the time you spend on weekends and just the time frame during the week for your practices. It adds up. And I know every sport is like that for the most part, but when you go to Sundays are getting better. So I think that for the kids club, because they split these matches, these times up now. But I'm going to say this, that I think number one is even in your kids club, I think as high school coaches, you don't have to be there all the time, but you want to be there for them. Get to walk the room every once in a while. Just show them you're around and talk to them. Even sometimes talk even about not even wrestling. Hey, what's going on? I hear you got a Bear shirt on. How come the Bears are so terrible? You're not a Packer fan, you know. But you know, stuff like that. I think kids see that you're more than a wrestling coach. I think that, and I'm really big on this, getting to know every kid in the room. I would say this, and if I had coaches that were kind of lacking there, not that every coach has to know each kid's name, it would be great to do that. Sometimes I would have a kid go up and say, "Hey, coach, you know my name?" and just to mess with the coaches. But it's a matter of showing that your love of the sport is not going to override, first of all, your expectations, because your expectations have to be high, and the sport that you're spending time with these kids on is one of, you know, like I said, I'm not even biased here. It's just one of the best sports I've ever been involved with, because many years was played football, played baseball, and wrestling is just such a integral part of your everyday life after high school or college. You just draw upon it all the time, and I think that you got to have faith in the kids. They got to know that you have faith in them, but at the same time, that faith comes with, you know, them putting the time in. I think that one of the key things you have to have is you get kids like Matt Cullum. I'm going to say some names from our Neuqua program, and I know I'm going to miss some names, right? And Matt Cullum was the best, most accomplished wrestler out of Neuqua's history. He took third twice, took first once, lost 3 times in his career at Neuqua, and he was an All-American twice in college. But he was the best coachable kid I've ever had. I shouldn't say ever had, but one of the top coachable kids I've had. That doesn't, I shouldn't say it that way. It's just that he's one of the top kids that you could coach, and he could go. He was one of the kids I used to help other kids out. Hey, these kids got to understand, Matt, that wrestling practice has got to be better than what they're showing, you know. And he wouldn't go beat them up. He'd just go wrestle them hard. And these kids would have to either make it or break it, you know. Kids like a kid named Brendan Hillis, you know, he's a kid who was a 1-year wrestler at the varsity level, tremendous athlete. He was a kid who went to overtime for 4 years. I think he's working. I know he's working for. He's an electrical engineer, and he's working for Air Force engineering aeronautical business. Not sure which one it is, but anyway, it's high level out east. I think it might be Boeing, but I'm not sure. But at the same time, he wrestled. First of all, Cordero Hightower was one of our toughest kids in the room. He was just a kid that went hard every single time. You talk about, okay, we're going to drill. He's got heavy drills. He knew how to drill light. He knew how to drill heavy. He knew how to go live. And people were afraid to wrestle with him because he just went hard all the time. Brendan goes, and Cordero's a middle linebacker in the football team, played 4 years of college football, played in the Arena League. He's a tough dude. Brendan Hillis, who weighed 176 pounds, and Cordero was wrestling 189 pounds, coming down from like 200. I'll wrestle him, coach. And Brendan would go as hard as he could with him. Never scored on him, except for an escape, but he wrestled him as hard as he could. And so when Brendan became a senior, he had a chance to wrestle varsity. Cordero was gone. And Nate Holly was the 71-pounder, and Brendan's still weighing 176, but he goes 189. He wins 31 matches. We had a team that was a tremendous team. We couldn't beat Lombard North that year, but we did beat St. Rita, who took second to state that year in a dual meet at the end of the year. And the reason why was because we changed our lineup around and put Brendan Hillis up to 220. And he ends up pinning the state qualifier. And just so those are the kids. And he worked hard every single day in that practice room. Whether he knew that he was, because he took second at the Dvorak tournament. At one set, when Nate Holly got sick, he took second at the Dvorak tournament and at 171. That's how good he was. But he just in the wrong weight class.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you got, Joey Katowski had broke his elbow wrestling overtime and going into his sophomore year, or in the sophomore year, going into his junior year. No, freshman and sophomore, I'm sorry. So the sophomore, he had no idea how that elbow, and he had like rods going through his forearm and his tricep.
Mhm.
It took him a full half of the season to understand that the elbow was okay. He goes, he couldn't even make the varsity lineup. So his part of the year makes the varsity lineup. He gets beat in his junior year by a state place winner, 5-4 in the first round of sectionals, but it wasn't a double elimination at that time. So he's out of the tournament. He gets to his senior year, and he takes second in the state. He loses 3 times that year to Albert White. So it's kids like, and I'm telling you what, you talk about when I say that he refined his high crotch. Oh my God, he was so good at the high crotch, and he was as good as the other guy was with the slide bite. And nobody could stop his high crotch except for Albert White. But I'll tell you what, it took him a second in the state, and just a great leader. He wanted other people to do what he did. And Matt Cullum, and these are different. Now they overlapped a little bit, but Nate Holly was a kid that worked his tail off.
Mhm.
He was probably the weakest kid wrestling varsity as a freshman I've ever seen. But he was such a goer that he was above 500. I believe he was above 500 as a freshman, 125-pounder.
Mhm.
And he just 2-time place winner. So, and it's not that they were 2-time place winner or state champions or whatever. It's just that they worked that hard to get where they ended up.
Yeah.
And those guys were tremendous leaders. So you got to find kids in the room that you can count on, and not have any thought process of doubting who you're putting in the leadership role.
That's awesome.
And these kids sometimes don't belong, even though they're the best wrestlers, sometimes they don't belong in the leadership role.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to say to yourself, you know what? Okay, right now, because who do you look to most? The kids are winning.
Mhm.
That's what it's like.
Natural.
Yes, thank you. And I'll tell you what, if you want that kid to be a leader, you got to train the kid to be a leader. And it's on the coaches to do that.
That's
that's
powerful.
That's pretty much, if you want your room to be good,
Mhm.
you got to get your leaders to be good.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate. That's a lot. That's a powerful message. That's a lot of what we heard. A lot tonight. That just those little things we got to do in the room. Everybody to get better. So we really appreciate you coming on, Coach, and being able to talk.
Hey,
about
can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The other thing I love to have in the room are families.
Mhm.
Families, man. I don't care if they're good family, if they're the most talented families or not in wrestling, or I mean, like we had the Spangler family that had the 3 boys that all made it downstate and did great. They were all wrestling in college for a short time or even finished, but they had a great career. The Seashells, who weren't they were very hard working kids. You had the Genslingers, you had the Epps, and what Brian Epp went to Purdue and was a biomed engineer, and he was just a tremendous student athlete. His brother Kevin went to West Point. Kevin, the only reason he stayed up for wrestling was so he could be in shape for lacrosse. Never wrestled a varsity match. So you have so many families out there. And again, I know I'm missing some. But I know time is running short. Families are a luxury to have in the room.
Mm-hmm. That's
So,
all. That's exactly what we preach with our hashtag. Coach Adam does a great job with that, getting that hashtag out there and making sure we have that FVWC family. That's what we try and preach. So.
Oh, exactly right. Yes.
Definitely matches up with what we're doing. So definitely really, really appreciate you coming on, Coach, and being able to impart on us some of your wisdom.
Well, I hope I lived up to Gabe Dean.
No, really.
You
no,
say
thanks,
Kyle
Coach.
Dake too?
No, we would. And we weren't able to get him, though, unfortunately.
Who's the first guy you hit on?
Ryan Deacon.
Oh, Ryan Deacon. Yeah. Yes. He's going to be he's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Or he already is, but anyway. No, I appreciate you letting me espouse some things here.
No, absolutely, Coach. Anytime. We really appreciate it. We thank everybody that logged on tonight too to come on and talk with us. So
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Coach. Appreciate it.
Adam, I appreciate you.
We took some notes. Hope you don't mind.
Hey, you know what? If you can't take from other programs, then you're not doing your job.
That's right. That's right.
That's one thing wrestling does. It definitely is out there and giving to other programs.
Yep. Beg, borrow, and steal, right?
At times, yeah. Exactly.
All right.
oh, Greg, you're muted, Greg. Unmute. Uh-oh. All right. Cool.
Oh, he's back.
He's back. I think you're muted, Coach.
I'm muted?
Oh, no, Greg
Hey,
Scott.
I just wanted to say thanks for everything,
Hey,
Coach.
Mr. Scott. There you go. How you doing, bud?
Doing great, doing great.
He's
Nice
one of
to
our
see
better
you, Coach.
coaches. Yeah, he was a good 5 or 6 years in the room, right?
Yep, 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. Greg did a great job, man. Who's behind you? Is that
That's
Nathan?
Nathan.
How you doing, bud? That's up. Here's another smart guy right there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we'll talk at you, Coach.
Yeah, you too. Hey, best to your family.
Same to you too, Coach.
You got it. Thanks. I got 3 grandkids now, so I'm doing good.
That's awesome.
So anyway, yeah, thanks for having me on. It was good. You guys are great times at Neuqua, and all because people came together.
We got a good group. We got an awesome group, that's for sure. So,
We're
Well, that's
gonna-
good. That's what you want, man. Hey, Ryan, it's good seeing you.
Great having you on, Coach. Thanks.
yeah, and this is Jim, by the way. This is another one of the dads that helps us out a lot with the program. So,
Yeah, we've talked. We talked at the tournament.
Yeah.
My mom grew up in the neighborhood by St. Mary Magdalene.
Your mom did? Yes, I remember that.
We talked about my grandma and your mom were cousins.
Small
And,
world.
Yeah.
See, the Ruettiger
we-
family, the Mandela family stretches far and wide.
Yep. Hey, what your junior year, was that Providence's first year
It was.
for wrestling?
Yes.
Who was the coach then?
My brother Danny, who's Rudy, he was one of the
Yeah.
coaches, and a guy by the name of Pat McInerney, who was football coach. He was a good guy, but and there was a guy named Dockendorf who came in. He was a Joliet legend. We call him Doc.
Mm.
He came in to show all the moves.
Did Pat McInerney? So there was a Pat McInerney that was so in '97 at Marist. I think he took second. There was a Pat McInerney. I don't know if that was.
Yeah, there was no. I don't think there was any relation there. Pat was. It wasn't his son. I know that. I don't know if there would have been a relation at all, but I don't think so. Could have been, because he's actually from the Chicago area. Pat was.
Yeah. So there was Sean and Pat McInerney. Sean was my age. Pat was senior in '97, and he was in that. Yeah, he was in the last match against Providence, against a kid. I can't remember his first name. His last name was Geisinger, and
Ryan.
And Pat had exactly. He didn't qualify for state that year, and I think he was ranked like in the top 4 or something. And McInerney took second. And going into that, whoever won this last state finals, last match, whoever won that match won the state championship. And Geisinger, who hadn't qualified that year, went out there and beat the guy who was the runner-up. And that was at Providence in '97. So I was there for that St. Charles, so that was in Champaign that year.
Yeah, it was.
And I was in.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to school in Champaign, so I got to see all those. I watched the St. Charles against Providence. Yeah, it was a great team you had that year.
Yeah, we did. We just had to get through that 60-pound match. We might have done something else.
Yeah.
No, small world.
Yep.
Wrestling reaches
Wait,
far and wide.
here, one more question for you. Sorry, was Mike Poles at Eastern when you were there?
Mike and I were actually we wrestled the same weight class. And
Well,
he was. Pardon me.
Yeah, so he was my coach at Providence,
Oh,
and
my
he was
God.
pretty.
Mike,
so
I'll
he
tell you
was
what.
pretty.
Mike and I had some battles, and you talk about being disappointed in your career, and you gotta suck it up and go on with life. It was either myself, because we wrestled 5 times. The time we went to that Oklahoma State tournament I was talking about when I wrestled Schultz,
Yep.
we had an
Yep.
overtime match. And I think we wrestled 15 minutes of wrestling, and I ended up coming out the winner on that. But it was one of the longest matches, obviously, that people have ever seen. But he was chosen to go to nationals over me that year, and that was just something you bit hard on it, and you just had to get through it and say, that's the way it goes.
Well, though I know his last year he took second.
He took second, yes.
Yeah.
He had a good career. He had a very good career, yeah.
He was intent as a coach, that's for certain.
Well, I'll tell you what, we had some great coaching at Eastern Illinois and Ron Clinton. And I'll tell you, he was very low-key, but the room was as intense as you could get. He was just – he never raised his voice once, but the room was people would stay after and wrestle 20 minutes, 25 minutes after practice, every practice. It was incredible.
Yeah, he had a great reputation for being a great coach at Eastern Illinois.
Yeah. He was a good guy to work with, too.
I'll stop bothering you.
No, this is awesome. I don't mind talking at all. This is, when you don't have that wrestling for the last 5-6 months, it's hard not to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
We're all junkies.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We just love talking shop. We actually we wanted to ask you some questions too. We're going to brainstorm here a little bit. I think Greg, still, Adam.
Okay, yeah, I'll take over. So